right, welcome to the Sober Heathen podcast. I am the Sober Heathen. Very happy today to sit down and talk with my buddy Ron. We were in Harbor Hall together. I won't go into the particulars right away, but this should be fun. Ron's a good dude. Ron, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great, man. Blessed to be here.
Yeah. So what's new, man? What's new since treatment?
Well, I just went over and did my step one over the weekend, so that was kind of nice. Felt a little exhausted, so I must have worked the step technically.
Talk a little bit more about that. I don't think everybody knows what working a step one means. I think that's kind of a Harbor Hall thing. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Well, I'm part of when I got out of Harbor Hall, I'll just start there. I got out of Harbor Hall, I did the 1016 outpatient, which is a recovery housing over here. I did outpatient as well as sober living, but I had to choose a program that I could take part into my daily life. So I joined NA's been a big factor in my recovery throughout the years. And the saying keep coming back, so it's like one of the things I might as well just stay,
Right.
So I got picked up a sponsor, and he's been doing 90 and 90 with me. That's one of the things we do, 90 meetings, 90 days, just to get acclimated with just people around here, making new connections. And I got the step working guide, through the NA literature, and you kind of go over that with they have a how it works book also, and you kind of reflect on yourself and things you've done and what you need to kind of surrender to, and I have to basically surrender my will over. I'm not always right. I have to remain teachable. And the NA programs offered me that. So I got dug into my step one, which is turn my will and my life over. I'm powerless over against my addiction. I'm getting ahead of myself. And it just asks you some questions throughout that. And it asks about, how if I'm obsessing, recently and what I'm obsessing about. And then it asks about the harms that you have done to others, how your addiction has affected others. It's kind of like a dig deep into your active addiction and kind of how you're also thinking without the chemicals in your head now and the difference in between that. I started talking about my daughters and got pretty choked up on how I affected them.
Sure.
But like I said, by the time I was done talking, we did a bonfire. And my sponsor would read through the steps and I would just kind of vocally talk about it. I've done some writing on it. And it was time to work with him about it. So I just kind of went from the heart. And by the time I was done, I was just kind of exhausted, just admitting a lot of the stuff. And I have been obsessing about other areas of my life. And I could see that, so it's kind of nice to recognize that clean today.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that I haven't had a lot from the NA side. And I have a couple people, one dude that comes to mind in particular on Twitter that, he's like, man, where are all the NAs at? Where, it's alcohol this and alcohol that. And I think, I want to go back to your step one thing, but I think, and maybe you can say this, comment on this as well. I think alcohol is more accepted. Oh, you're an alcoholic? Well, that's terrible, but at least you're not a hard drug user. At least you're not one of those people, right? I mean, do you ever feel that way?
I have had that to where it's legal or it is more socially acceptable. However, what I like to point out about the whole NA thing is it's not about the drugs or alcohol. I mean, that's just the symptom of what's really going on. We deal with the disease of addiction. To me, this is a thinking disease. And if I don't do daily maintenance on that for myself, and my thoughts get a little squirrely. I think negative about things that I shouldn't, or I worry, or I have fear. So this kind of does an underlying, not just about substance, but about the addiction itself. I mean, heck, I'm drinking coffee left and right. You talk about caffeine, I kind of switched to that, so it's kind of realizing what you're overusing, how I'm eating. I mean, I've become really into candy lately, Jolly Rancher saved my butt, but I'm constantly putting one in my mouth.
Yeah.
So it's just seeing them other things other than just the drugs and alcohol.
Sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a stigmatism because it's like, okay, well, at least I drink, I don't do this, or at least I'm smoking weed, but I'm not doing that, or at least I'm doing cocaine, but I'm not doing heroin, stuff like that. It makes no difference. Drugs are drugs are drug to me. You know,
Sure,
alcohol's
sure.
a drug, you know, everything's a drug. I mean, even caffeine's a mind altering substance to a point.
No, it absolutely is. Yes, and I use Dr. Pepper like it's going out of style. Regular Dr. Pepper Zero, Diet Dr. Pepper. I mean, if it's Dr. Pepper, man, it's in my gut.
Yeah.
And you're right. The program, especially with NA and AA, talk about, the substance is just a symptom. You're using that as to deal with the things that are on the inside. I think what the problem is for people who want to get started into this, you find somebody passed out from a rough night of drinking, um, you know, they're looked upon a different way than, I just had a guy, well, we both know him, but I won't say who, but I just had a buddy that was found face down, right? And because he OD'd. So walking in and seeing somebody that was taking a bunch of this or smoking that or shooting this or that, there just seems to be a worse stigma on that. And it's really the same thing, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what the substance is. They all suck ass.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I'm really glad to have somebody on the NA side of this to kind of talk about this. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that also in the, like, as far as society's gone, that with the overdoses that have been happening, it's been more of an eye opener on different substances besides just alcohol. However, alcohol makes a lot of money and is very socially. I mean, in my opinion, you go into a town like Bay City where they turn into a chemical type of town. You know what I mean? As far as I could tell. So I don't know, but it's just finding that program, and words are just words, whether it's alcohol for anonymous or narcotics for anonymous or cocaine for anonymous or sex for anonymous. You know what I mean? It's what program works for the individual. May you find your way,
Yeah, addiction has many labels, like you said. They can
Yeah.
be sex, gambling, buying things. I think I got a little problem with that. Buying things makes Scott feel more gooder.
Yeah.
To use proper English or not proper English. Miley said that there's no such thing as people who say more gooder, but you know what? I'm going to be me and say more gooder on. Damn it.
Yeah. Well, I've been pretty open about my use, so I haven't really, as far as the stigma goes, this hasn't happened to me because I talk about it all, I guess. So for others, it might be a little differently as far as the stigma goes.
Sure. Now that's going back to that step one. You're obviously doing something different with your sponsor now that we did in Harbor Hall. And Harbor Hall, we had to go through, what was it, like 20, 23, 28, something like that, questions. And they called that step one. And that was something that you had to work on for days, if not weeks. And then we had to sit in front of the entire house of men, which is 20, 30 dudes. And we basically, our step one was to tell our life story. And what you're doing is you're basically going through the entire steps, but you're talking about how it started, what happened and why you're there. You know what I mean? So that was a pretty intensive thing, and it is exhausting. I would like to get those, actually, I would like to get those questions, but I think they're kind of like copyrighted to Harbor Hall. I kind of asked somebody that worked there and they're like, I'm not really sure. I can just send you those, but I do have a copy somewhere, so I'd like to go back through those myself.
Yeah, I still have my copy too. I save all my stuff for
do you?
referencing and stuff. Yeah, of course.
Well, then you're gonna have to shoot me a screenshot.
Yeah, it's been a big, deep, dig deep program, and Harbor Hall, that's one thing that they opened me up about, is being just brutally honest from the very start, and that's what if you want to succeed, I would imagine that's what you got to do. And that's what I decided to do. It's very tough at Harbor Hall, kind of spilling my guts in front of everybody, but it was very nice to do so,
Yeah. And one thing that, as he's called Spirit Dan, he would always talk about being authentic, and that's really, my podcast isn't something that I have, millions of listeners, but I have enough that it's growing, and people, the one thing that always comes to mind is like, I like how authentic you are, just because I speak real. I don't edit my shit. If I fuck up or say something, that some people might take the wrong way, I try to clarify it the best I can, and I keep going, You know what I mean? And I think you're doing a good job with that too, man. Um, so what's it been like since you got out of treatment, your last treatment? So that would have been what, 10/16?
Yeah, because we sober living, yeah.
Yeah, sober living. So what's it been like, man? Where are you at in your sobriety? I'm moving farther and farther away about giving shit about the days.
Yeah,
Because if I don't have today, those whatever X is, which is the previous amount of days, doesn't mean shit if I don't stay sober today, but it's still something that should be celebrated. So where are you at, man?
well, I'm 10 months right now. I
Woo!
moved out of sober living and I did have a lapse. Life definitely happens as soon as you leave a facility of controlled environment. I jumped into buying my own home and got overwhelmed with wanting everything back at once for some reason. I wanted what I wanted and I wanted it now. However, it lasted a day. I went back over to my counselors at text 1016, talked to work and held myself accountable for everything. Everybody knows my story and
Good.
been good since. And it's been really my dad decided to leave my mom. I ended up having a baby that wasn't mine. I ended up going through all this stuff that life happens, and I've been able to go through these emotions without putting something on top of it. And some days are hard, but at the same time, I have these tools and different thought processes about them because the feelings do pass. And if feelings the worst I get out of my sobriety, I'll take that all day, you know. I mean, it's really
Yeah,
not bad just to feel. I don't have to put chemicals on top of it. So yeah, life is actually really good. I adopted a couple cats. They're brothers, they keep me entertained here at the house. My living room looks like a library. I'm stuck into literature all the time. I love to read now.
awesome.
And I'm chairing meetings, so I'm doing meeting every day. Every night I'm on a system. I chair the weekend meetings here in my hometown, and I'm getting involved that way, keeping myself busy. So everybody around here has been very supportive. So I kind of just moved to where recovery was, and made it easier not to use,
Dude, I
Yeah.
gotta tell you, man, there's a confidence coming in your voice that wasn't there, there's a confidence, speaking from a place of, some comfort there. So it's really good to see, man. It's really
Yeah.
good to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Here.
good. It feels great. My last couple of days been pretty damn productive, especially after I did my step one stuff. I was pulling weeds. Like that's the first time in years I went outside just to pull some weeds because I didn't like how it looked. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah, things are changing. I ride my bike. I ride that about 7 miles to work in the morning. I'll
Damn.
Yeah, give or take when I ride at home, of course, depending on the heat. But yeah, it's something that get outside of myself and challenge myself with. So that's what I'm doing, coming up with new challenges.
Jesus.
I'm looking at different job opportunities here and there, but I'm taking my time with that. Um, just staying on track. I'm going to a barbecue sober event here at Stratford Park today, getting acclimated and nice recovery community and get together for some cornhole and volleyball stuff and have those sober relationships and kind of share the message and just show it worthwhile.
Fuck yeah, dude. Look at you go, man. 7 miles on a bike. You're slimming down. Fuck, I'm over here fatter than ever because but no, dude, this is really good stuff to hear, man. Yeah. It's you probably have a vision of me from Harbor Hall. I had this, I remember Ron from Harbor Hall, the poor guy, I just wanted to just give you a hug or shake you, whatever it was. But look at you now, man. I'm so glad that we did this, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, let me I don't know if you know what fucking time we started. I try to keep these things around 40-45 minutes, but so I did something I've never done before. I posted on Twitter. I said, hey, I'm having an impromptu kind of last minute thing with a buddy of mine that I went to treatment with. What should I ask him? And I actually had a handful of people. I sent you some of them, but there's some other ones on here. And I gotta tell you, I should have done it, but now the way things are going, it just doesn't feel right. He's like, ask him about football. Somebody said, Ask him about Aaron Rodgers. What do you think about Aaron Rodgers being 45? And it's just throw him for a loop. And I was like, that's fantastic. I should have done that, but
Yeah, it's
we'll stick to the other ones though. So this person, they didn't really ask the questions. All she said is relapse awareness. So I'm supposed to ask you about relapse awareness. So you had whatever happened 10 months ago. Congratulations again on that, by the way.
Yeah.
So what are some things? Obviously, you're going to meetings, but Ron's sitting by himself. Plans change. All of a sudden, it's like nothing's going your way, and the mind starts thinking, what keeps you aware of these feelings?
Well, the first thing is I've never really picked up the phone before. I've changed that now. I get in my own head. I definitely sponsorship is something that's really helped me being able to call him, and and I was able to connect. It wasn't like the very first guy I talked to. It was
Sure.
like an interview and seeing who we clicked with and who had enough sobriety time under their belt. And I ended up with a gentleman with 25 years, and to me, he sounds wise to me, I guess, but he tends to kind of talk to what I listen to the tune of my own. I don't know. I help with myself. He is right about a lot of things, gives me a different way to look at it. So when I'm sitting here by myself, kind of in the negative or just not going anywhere, I'll strike up a conversation with him or reach out to somebody else. I don't sit here in my own stuff, that's for sure. Another thing I like to do is I read a few of the chapters out of any book. Like I said, I like to read, and I'm big into recovery reading. There's a lot of different things and stories out there from other recovery people to make you kind of not feel alone. I know I was down in the dumps on my birthday. And what I did to handle that is I wasn't getting any phone calls because, I ruined them relationships, and it's going to take time. Something I have to offer patience for. But on my birthday, however, I wasn't getting the phone calls I wanted. Kind of allowed that to get to me, pity me, stuff like that. So what I did is I just zoomed meetings. I ended up doing it from like 6 p.m. till 1 a.m. meeting after meeting. There's a meeting an hour, every hour of the day from all over. And what I found interesting, I was sitting in a meeting in Texas. Then I went to a meeting in California. Then I was even one in Kansas, struck up a conversation with a guy in Canada. So I don't have to sit here by myself and go down any negative paths. I like to stay busy with some housework. But yeah, if I find myself complacent or get, woe is me type deal, I'll call somebody or get on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's
Yeah,
great.
I mean, I try not to get overwhelmed in thoughts, and they have them or the relapse triggers, kind of warning signs. And if you see any of that stuff yourself or if somebody else brings it up, get your ass to a meeting and call your sponsor.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And those holidays and stuff can be, I'm glad you brought that up, expectations, right?
Yeah.
So expectations, we expect people to, sometimes, and I fell into this, expectation can be both ends of it. You expect people to think poorly of you when they're not thinking poorly of you, or you think that I'm expecting that everybody's going to judge me at this event. That just happened to me last weekend. I've come this far. People should be texting me and telling me happy birthday or Merry Christmas or happy 4th of July, and they're not doing it. We can really set ourselves up for failure. So I think that's a great point. Kim on the live, she says fucking brilliant. So she really enjoyed what you just said. Also, some guy named let's see here. I shouldn't assume gender, but Steen Fisher or something like that. He says the myth, the legends, my brother's in sobriety. So Steen's listening.
Right.
He's got 16 months. And obviously my good friend Ryan's listening too. So we got some people paying attention, man. It's pretty sweet. I'm very proud of you, dude. I'm loving what I'm hearing today. So all right, so let's move on to another one. This Brian says, talk about that little ray of hope that came through, or at least I hope it did, that started me on my journey. So he's talking about he's saying that there was that little something came through and it was like he could grasp onto that or follow that light. Do you have a moment where you can think of where you can narrow it down? If you don't, do you have something where you kind of, this is a turning point?
Trying to think. I think there's been a few type of turning points for me, I guess. And it's actually come from watching other people. You can learn a lot by watching other people go through the process and their struggles or in their victories, give you something to be like, wow, I want to get me some of that. Somebody's at peace with something, you want to find out how they got that peace. For me, it was a big inspiration actually at Harbor Hall, when he said he will not, well, how do you say, he will not debate with our disease, that kind of struck me right there. It kind of eye-opened me a little bit, be like, yeah, why am I debating with my disease? What am I talking about here? So I've been putting stuff in place to kind of combat that ever since. I won't debate with my disease. It's been one of my things I've said, I've stuck with me. So that's kind of a turning point in my thinking process, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, that's great. And I think Dan is probably the guy, he's the only person that I've ever met that that hasn't come from addiction that fucking gets it.
Mhm.
I will not negotiate with your disease, is the disease, we'd get in that room all together, and, is it in the house? And when he said it, he's referring to the disease, you know what I mean? And he knew, and I don't know how he did it. I don't know how somebody that's never been through it could understand it so well, but the dude has a gift and I really appreciate him. I mean, he was a giant dick sometimes, but he only did it to the people that were really asking for it. You know what I mean? They were not asking for it, but in their own way, I think they were asking for help, by lashing out and acting out.
Well, a part of me wants to think that because the way he was going about it seems like he wanted to touch with that disease. You know what I mean? See how you would get, what kind of reaction, what side of the brain you're going to think with. You're going to, do it a little bit logically. You're going to do it irrationally. You're going to act out. If I say this to you and push your buttons, how irrational are you going to be about it? So I've seen people walk out and get that mad. It's either that or you look at it, you try to look at it differently. And that's the key about being open-minded. I say that all the time. You got to be open-minded on changing. You're not thinking totally correctly. They don't call it disease thinking for no reason. And if you're, so it's kind of like you're fighting yourself in a way. You do need that outsider to kind of get you on track on a path of thinking, I guess.
And it seemed like, out of all the people that would walk out, more came right back than
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. The cooling off period.
Yeah. So Sober Grid Coaching says, ask what to expect during the transition back to society from the inpatient unit. So obviously we've been out of Harbor Hall for a minute and you talked about how you had a little relapse. So, was it something that was festering? Was it something that just came out of nowhere?
I'd say just being overwhelmed. I did put them expectations up there. It's absolutely correct on not setting expectations. Everything that I thought that I would get out of it, I did not get out of it. I'm able to have a home to live in, I was able to work hard to get that. But as far as having life the way I thought it would be, it's not the way it went, and I had to find acceptance to that, especially because I want what I want, there's certain relationships, they just might not come back, stuff like that. So I just had, that, I don't know, as soon as I stepped out of a controlled environment, life hits you in the face, and everything, and I think you get a lot of worry and a lot of your anxiety happens all at once, and it depends on how you handle it. I went back to my old ways and I shouldn't have. However, I recognized it and was able to stop it a lot faster than normal. Usually I get stuck in that rut and it takes, hell's fury to get me out of it. Sure. This time it scared me straight. I was very scared when I picked up that bottle, when I got out of all my treatment stuff. That night to the next morning, I seen in my head what my future would be like, because now I have that choice, right? Because I mean, before we were like, we don't have a choice, a kind of type deal, but now I have that choice. I know if I pick up again, I'm going to lose everything I worked for. I know that I'm going to end up dying. I'm going to end up back in jail. That's been the record. That is, if I play the tape back, here's the evidence shown. So it was kind of like a scare tactic, man. I never want to go back to that. So I'll never, it's one of them, do what I can to alleviate the pressure of life, and don't set up expectations or unreasonable expectations anyways. So I'm doing it a day at a time. For the first time in my life, I actually understand what it means to live a day at a time. So that's where I'm at. But
Yeah.
yeah, life definitely hits you with overwhelmness and expectations of after you get out what you think it should be. And it's usually not. So don't set yourself up that way. Be humble and get out to your meetings and branch out with other people that's been through it, to surround yourself with connections, healthy
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah. This podcast has saved me and kept me going many times, man.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to people from all over the world and around the US or whatever, and hearing those stories keep things fresh. You know what I mean?
Right on.
All right. So Rich, a good buddy of mine, we do some Twitter spaces together. He wants us to talk about the methodology that was used in the treatment. We talked about that a little bit with Dan poking the bear and kind of some tough love scenarios at Harbor Hall. Obviously, he said, did it help? And I think it got us going, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, I relapsed too pretty hard, got my 4th OWI after leaving Harbor Hall. But it took that last relapse to put everything into action that I learned at Harbor Hall.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I could be sitting, Steen's got 16 months, I could be sitting at a year and a half too, but that didn't happen. But here I am and I'm feeling better than ever, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Um, he says, how were the messages delivered to you, and above all else was effective? We talked about that. I feel they were pretty effective. Obviously 1016 he says, treatment can be a really scary thing. I know. I was in long-term treatment. I was brainwashed into believing that I had a problem. 20 years later, I would come back to realize that it was true. The treatment industry, and it is just that. It's not a bad point. It is an industry. It is there to make money.
Yeah.
Despite having many amazing people working and serving in it, is guilty of seeking profit rather than results. So with Harbor Hall, man, I don't know the ins and outs of that, but it didn't feel that way. Did it feel that way to you, that you're just another person walking into the door and we're just gonna get you in, get you through the treatment and get you out? Did it feel that way to you at all?
No, not at all. I've been through programs that way. This would have been my 7th facility as far as rehabs go. And I could tell the difference between caring and just doing the money. It's like even with therapy, they're either there to help you individually or they're just there for their paycheck. Harbor Hall, it was very caring as soon as I walked in the door. They seen me go through anxiety attacks. They don't recommend isolation, but they let me, spend that panic attack time inside my room, and we talk about it with the therapist, and they shared, like they'd have a meeting every day and talk about each person and where they were at individually. And that created a good therapy environment for each person. So it was much more about helping a person versus the business aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mean, hopefully we're cool. I didn't mean to make this an advertisement for Harbor Hall. It's just, I know that we were in it together. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to talk about it because, as Richard talked about in the tweet, it can be a scary thing to go into treatment.
Absolutely. Well, I have been part of another couple other programs early in my recovery where were the same thing. It's very much, what sucks is you sign on for a 90-day program and you got to figure that out through that long stay if they're there for your individual needs or not. But I guess that's where you do your homework and reviews. But however, if you're rushing to a rehab, that's not the very first thing you're looking
Oh, fuck, dude. My first one, I went in there, it was a 30-day program, and at 26, like it was, I had like a week to go, and the counselor's like, I think you're doing great, would you want an early release? And it's like, looking back now, like, why the fuck would you ask me that? Of course I do. of course I want to get out of here early. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And then I lasted like a week, felt, on cloud nine. I looked great. I felt great. And then it was worse than ever. It's like, fuck, fuck
well,
off, dude.
I've met a couple people that Harbor Hall wasn't for them, you
Yep.
know.
Yeah.
Everything's very individualized. So to find that, it's like finding the right sponsorship or right meeting or the right program for you.
It
Yeah.
it it really is a son of a bitch though,
Yeah,
Ron, because you could walk into anywhere and not be ready for treatment and say, this isn't for me. I need to find something else. You
that's
know what I
true.
mean?
There's a fine
So
line there.
it's a son of a bitch. It's when you're ready to put the effort in, I mean, I would send, well, I work for another treatment place now, so now I kind of have to, say, hey, you should go here. But
Yeah.
Harbor Hall is always going to have a special place for me. So let's talk about something a little more fun here.
Yeah.
Brent B asks, new things you have learned to enjoy in sobriety. So I know for me things have changed. So what do you enjoy now in your 10 months of sobriety, that maybe talk about things that you enjoy, that you, like you said, pulling weeds, that you might not have enjoyed before, or things that you used to love that have come back in your life. What do you enjoy now in sobriety that was gone in addiction?
Well, I mean, reading is one of them, regardless of my reading material has changed, but I used to read all the time. I was raised my kids on it. It just helps. And I got away from that very heavy in my depression and active use. And technically that's all the hobbies I had at the time. So that's what has changed now is I gotten back into that. I got bought a nice bike. I'm doing the more exercise stuff. I love doing yard work, cooking, and being able to eat finally, and instead of
Yeah.
not eating for days, it's nice. So I get into cooking and I love helping others. I find joy in that, but I have to make sure that I'm helping others for the right reason, not to not focus on myself. So it's like, okay, make sure that I'm doing it in a healthy manner. But I love giving back and volunteering and stuff, and that's all stuff I never did. I was too busy on my couch sitting by myself, so nobody know what I was doing.
Sure.
So yeah, it's definitely night and day. I'm slowly getting back. I'm gonna get into some RC cars, the gas powered ones, as I got to go buying a couple of those running around my lot here. So yeah, I'm gonna go get my fishing license, do some fishing throughout this rest of the summer and fall. I was talking with a couple guys about that. We're playing sober poker night. We do that
Awesome.
with some of the guys. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely different ways. I mean, we do my sponsor loves board games. I'm not a big board game guy, but at the same time, it's a good activity to do on a rainy night.
Sure.
Get together with another sober person and play a game.
Yeah.
The ideas of fun have definitely changed. So yeah, do
Well,
the activities with the clean community that you can.
well, and now you're a cat lady too, right? So I mean, you got that going for you too.
Definitely have the run of the house, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing though, I mean, it was great to have the companionship of these two sitting here, on a sad day, they can actually, when you're sad and make you smile. So
Uh,
yeah, it's nice.
yeah, I told a couple of people, I was like, I'm gonna get on and I'm gonna give Ron a hard time, and it hasn't went that way. So I had to take the jab at the cat lady thing. I mean, you're no offense to cat ladies out there. I'm sure you're a great cat daddy or whatever they call it, man. So
Make sure you're right. Am I sober heathen at Scott? Never mind.
yeah, yeah, I'll get a bunch of hate mail for a cat lady comment.
Yeah.
So AA is big for you. In the podcast, I've talked to a lot of people that it's come through, or NA, I'm sorry, NAAA. They're the same to me, and I know they're not the same thing, but to me, it's the same thing. But
Well, the things that separate them that I'm learning are the traditions, the promotion, stuff like that, like kind of advertising within the groups of the other groups. And technically I've been through AA. I've taken, it's kind of like take what you can use, leave the rest
yeah,
type of thing.
yeah,
So I've used plenty of but AA in my arsenal. And technically, AA came from that Stratford, right? And then he had AA. Well, then all of a sudden NA said, well, we want a part of that. Let's create our own traditions and word it differently. So now you have the NA that said, okay, we're gonna list this for the actual addiction part, not just the chemical. And I actually had a guy at work said, well, this says narcotics on it. So what? I mean, if that would have said something different, would that be okay? So it's just, I mean, it's just a mental thing to practice the traditions and the program you're at. However, if you're into multiple programs, right, you still want to have that one main program, but take what you can use out of the other ones. There's plenty of things and knowledge in everything that's recovery related. That's what I found out, so I spread that message into what I share. That's my spiritual journey.
Yeah,
So,
I think all those things are very important. Take what you need and leave the rest. I know that, when we were in treatment together, most people migrated to the AA meeting, and it wasn't because it was the AA meeting, it was because of the connection, the crowd. The AA meetings just had a better feel, and I never went to the NA side, but it was the same thing that everybody would say, like, I'm going to AA tonight because the feel isn't right over in the NA group. And that could have easily been flipped, you know what I mean? I'm not saying anything against the NA. It was just that particular group just didn't have the connection. We were crying, we were, cheering for each other, and it was just a greater connection. And I think that connection is the number one thing.
right. Well, it's kind of nice. Like when you join the one group, right? You like say you do your 90 and 90, they notice when you're not going to meetings. They notice when you're kind of off kilter at the meeting. They ask you what's wrong, or like you said, you get that phone call if you miss a meeting. It's not like they're chasing you down, but that first initial phone call to say, hey, are you okay? Goes a long way. So I mean, it is important to find I think a certain fellowship that you can be accountable with. However, it's up to you on which one that is, which coincides, because I mean, what works for me doesn't work for others.
Yeah. And like we talked about, you have to be extremely honest with yourself, though, in order to
Mhm.
find that. You have to, am I not liking this because I'm uncomfortable and I don't like the things that are being said, or am I uncomfortable because I don't want to face the things that I'm facing? It takes extreme, inner look and investigating your thoughts of why I don't like this or that to really make that, man. Then I think that's when things change, man.
Well, the one thing we've been talking about lately here, as far as locally, is kind of the relationship thing, right? The one thing people don't really pay attention to or try not to pay attention to is sex. I guess that comes with your addiction and pleasure. And they say to avoid your emotional roller coaster for a year after you're focusing on yourself. And I never quite understood that because I always wanted to have somebody next to me help me. And whatever have you. But them emotional changes within that year of working on yourself and going through everything, the emotional wreckage of your past, and then to get involved into some kind of intimate type of deal with another individual and say it doesn't work. And I can kind of see now that from a record of my past, you want to watch some major emotional changes that you can control. So I kind of been on that track too, looking at recovery different in that aspect, because you definitely want to be careful who you let into your life at an intimate level. That way you don't get hurt in the process of healing, because that's what we're doing, right? We're healing. Our brain takes who knows how long to actually heal anyways. And so it's kind of like just being there for the support for our brothers and sisters rather than being a codependent type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's why they tend to say you need a year, right, to give your brain and everything time to adjust. And like you said, it is different for every single person. So that's good, man. I'm glad that you're focused on this. I'm glad to see you the way I'm seeing you here on the camera. You look good. You sound good. You sound strong, man. I'm really happy to see that, dude.
No, I'm glad we did this, Scott, for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, what else you got? What else you got going on? Anything you wanna share before we go enjoy the festivities of America's birthday?
Yeah, right. As far as anything I want to share, the things that have, I guess what has helped me, and that's the how of the programs, is the honesty. I had to be really honest with myself, not, say, hey, could it be this? No, it's that. It's nobody else's fault. I'm at fault. The open-mindedness to change, and changing your thinking as far as that goes, it takes time. It took me forever to groove my head how it thinks. So
Sure.
changing the perspectives and how I think and my automatic reactions to negative situations is going to take time. So I have to offer myself that time, and the willingness to do so, the willingness to take action to change. And that's what it is. I mean, you got to take the action. You can sit here and just sit at meetings. You can sit here and just talk to people. But if you're not putting actions into yourself to do better, nothing will ever change. So I'm a big advocate for the how of the program, guys, really. So,
Yeah, nothing changes if nothing changes, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
Right on,
easy.
man.
It's easy to sit here on this couch, man. I mean, my brain will want me to sit here all day, but as soon as I, talk to myself, say, no, let's get up and do something. Once you start, it's easy to keep going.
Dude, there's a fucking energy coming from you there that I don't remember, and I'm so happy to see it, my friend. And there's a true, genuine smile on your face. Makes me so happy to see it, dude. This podcast, they never go the way that I think they do, but I'm really happy the way that this one went. Just to see the smile and see the energy and the positivity coming from you, my friend. It was really good to sit down and chat and do this thing, and we'll do it again, because again, I don't like keeping them separate, but people do feel separate when it comes to NA and AA. I think a lot of the people that are on the NA side, I want to try to encourage them to speak out more and help those people out. It just it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to hurt anything to have an avenue to talk about what you've gone through on that side of the fence.
I did do a Naranon meeting for the family of for families of addicts and stuff. It's kind of like Al-Anon. I recommend that too. It's just sitting through one of those to see how they
Yeah.
blame themselves.
Yeah.
Like I had, a father, he's blaming himself. It's my fault. They always think it's his fault. But at the same time, that's why they're there, for the support to show
Yeah.
it's not their fault and to give them the tools to do what they can. And it's just a
No,
different, a different knowledge. And so I recommend doing that.
you're absolutely right. And my first guest on the podcast was a woman from the Al-Anon side, because I want this podcast to not just be for people that are going through addiction itself, but the people that have been affected. Because you're absolutely right, man. Hearing those stories and the guilt and the weight that our loved ones put on themselves for our behaviors, it really is eye opening. It's not just happening to you. And as somebody, I can speak for myself, it just felt like the world was crumbling around me. And so I would just go drink more. I wasn't really thinking about what was happening to the people that I care about, and what way they were putting on themselves on top of seeing me go through that. So yeah, that's a great point, dude.
All right, man. I'm
All
glad
right.
we got to talk, Scott. You're looking good, brother.
Yeah, well, I'm festively plump, but I'm happy and I'm sober, so fuck it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Good deal.
All right, buddy. Well, you have yourself a wonderful day, and stay in touch, my friend.
Yeah, I will, man. You too.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye.